There it is,
There's
Craig.
Craig.
Craig, our old buddy. I only had to give him admin rights to get him in here. Stingy
It's like,
bastard.
okay, now recording.
Thanks for giving me the keys to the castle. Anyways, welcome back to another episode. We have our normal co-hosts, me, Isaac, Joe,
Hello.
plus one bonus guest this week, Michael. Let's say hello.
You can call me Abby Normal.
Okay.
Hello.
I've been reading your incredible dad jokes on your Twitter for the past week.
Oh yeah, you like that?
Oh man, they're just
They're so bad.
like, listen, I like dad
If
jokes, but some of
If
those
it's
have been
good,
pretty well.
it's not a dad joke.
No, that's not true. You can have funny dad jokes. Just
The longer the sigh, the better.
Okay.
well, then any joke works on Isaac.
How dare you try to make a joke?
Would this joke do well on a Laffy Taffy wrapper? That's a good dad joke.
That's
Yeah,
that's the bar.
That's the bar.
the contactless or whatever one, the last one that you did? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic.
Glasses wearing during football because it's a contact sport.
Yeah, because it's a contact sport. Yep, that's it. All right, well, terrible dad jokes aside, this was your topic, right, Isaac?
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about DMing.
We're going to talk about DMing. Mostly, probably not the rules, because as many times as I've DM'd, I've never read the DMG. What about you guys? You guys ever read the DMG?
I have not. I mean, I have not read any of the books cover to cover, but I have read through a lot of the things in all the rule books.
Yes.
Okay.
I have.
You have read the DMG?
I have.
Really? Like cover to
Wow.
cover? You sat down and
Well, not like I'm reading a book.
oh, that's what. Yeah, I've probably read.
I don't. When I say have you read a
Mm.
D&D book, I don't mean did you sit down and like take it in like a novel. I'm just
Oh,
asking,
well, I
like
mean,
have you
at
gone
least-
over it?
I've read at least 50% of all of the source books. Would be my guess.
I
read it.
DM.
Far after I started DMing.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
There's a lot more things in there than I assumed there would be. I figured it was just gonna be like generic
Yeah.
DM kind of stuff. But there's all kinds of helpful things in there.
Maybe I'll
stuff
have
from,
to check it out.
Making magic items and
I was just
all
winging
kinds
it.
of stuff.
I'm always just like, all right, let's go.
Lots of helpful how to wing it help as well.
I get that from Sly Flourish's Lazy Dungeon Master's Guide.
My Flourish is my hero.
Yeah, dude. Anyone out there thinking about DMing Sly Flourish, shout out. That guy's a champ. His YouTube channel is good. His DM's guide is very good. I'm gonna get my physical copy here soon. Hot
I
dang.
got my email today about it.
Yeah, so did I. Final change. We're
yeah.
finally printing these things. Better be it's not a hardcover. I thought it would be, but after this long, geez. Anyways, DMing stories. We're already like 10
Yeah,
minutes into
so-
this, not talking about anything.
The first thing I kind of wanted to touch on was because everyone here has DM'd at least once. What were your like expectations of DMing versus how it ended up? For me, the first thing I DM'd was that we did the little practice run I did with you guys and Ray.
Yeah.
Dragon of Icespire Peak.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's different doing a pre-written as opposed to a homebrew. But for the pre-written, I was like, okay, I can just read this whole thing and then I'll be good to go. But that's hard to do because when I try to sit down and read a whole module, man, that's a lot.
The modules, I find the modules to be more difficult because like
It's the rails are a lot more rigid, and if your player characters don't do the things that the book suggests that they do, it's like I don't know what happens now.
I think the only module I've ever actually run was Phandelver. I've always done custom campaigns, but I didn't really have any expectations when I first DM'd. I mean, anxiety, but like other than that, it's like when I first started DMing, it was mini wargaming with D&D rules.
So the difference between my expectation and reality for me was I expected to be able to convey a lot more information than I did, because when I'm going through it in my head, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to, how I want to describe this room or whatever. So I'll start talking about it, and I'm like, there's all these other things going on in my head Like, well, make sure you don't miss these other things because they're important plot points potentially. And if you don't say it now, it's not going to make sense later. So make sure you hit that. And then also you got to tell them, like, what does this place smell like? Oh, geez. And then whenever I get into it, I'm like, you're in a room.
Are you sure you're not a little ADHD like me, dude? Like that sounds like me when I'm running a module. All right, so they just walked in this room, and I'm like, everyone, shut up, so I can read this. The dank walls are, you know what I mean? Like I have to read like the whole thing. Oh my god. What about you, Michael?
I would say the most thing that I didn't expect was just how like fast time flew. Because you're very busy. Typically, like D&D, 3-4 hours. We know, and you're sort of a lot of the time you're just kind of sitting there, just sort of waiting around. But as a DM, there is no wait around time.
Yeah.
Even when the party is like talking, you're still like running things in your head, trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And trying to listen. But the one thing I think Isaac said this is like you have certain things like quest things that you want to make sure you get set out. Like, I want to make sure that they know that this is happening, so then it makes sense later on. And it amazed me how many times, like 99% of the time, I would forget to mention that key factor anytime you guys entered any sort of room or whatever. There was one thing I wanted to make sure I'd say, and I'd forget it. And I'd remember in the next room, like, oh, well, I guess we'll slip it under that chair or something. There's a note.
That's like one of those. Actually, Joe, what's yours first before I like go off on another tangent?
I've only DM'd once for D&D, and it was with players that have never played before. So whenever I went into it, it was honestly way easier to DM for people that have never played than it was to run that one shot that we played. It was way easier just because I'm the only one who has knowledge of the games and nobody else does. You can kind of flub things and just be. It was a lot easier to like be descriptive and stuff. And they were like, "Ooh, that sounds really cool." And it was just basically just like the room has a dark green color, and they're like, "Awesome."
It's not.
It made it real easy that it was.
I've never had the room descriptions like a ton of that. I've never had a ton of that in any like the way they are in the modules. I mean, like there's been plenty of description, but like I've never run a campaign and been like, all right, well, I know they're going to go to this room. I'm going to write down exactly what this room looks like and smells like, and then describe it to them the second they walk in the door. I've never done that personally. I think the biggest thing for me was like coming to the realization that even though it feels like you're messing it up, you're not really messing it up because they have no idea what the plan is. This isn't going to plan. It's not working. It's like, dude, they think everything's awesome because they don't know what the plan is.
True. Theoretically. But it feels like, oh crap, I'm doing so bad.
It does feel
everything I wanted to do.
Oh, sorry. Mm-hmm. Oh, spicy drink.
I will say talking about flubbing it, I learned to enjoy DMing a lot more whenever I gave up on trying to like make sure I knew the rules and played it by the rules and just sort of winged it. Made up my own magic and made up my own stuff.
When did you first start doing that?
Wait, winging stuff?
Yeah, like that.
Probably our last campaign.
The Friday one.
Not this one, but the one we started on the kitchen table. You know that one. That's when I started
the old one.
Flubbing.
I would say like I started enjoying D&D a lot more about that time as well because it didn't. I always hated the like. Why are we stopping for 15 or 20 minutes to look this up? Can't we just move on and say it works this way and then we'll read it later? Like I just want this to go. I want to like make progress. And sometimes some campaigns feel like, all right, I'm going to do this thing. And then someone's like, let's look this up. And it's like, all right, well, I guess I'll just wait 20 minutes while you decide if I can do this thing or not. Instead of
I always struggled with my monsters, making sure I played my monsters right. You know, like he can just attack and he does this ability. I'd always screw it up. And so I always struggled with that. And then finally I was like, I gave in to where if I play a monster and I screw up something and I do something wrong, then that's how it is. For
monsters, that's how it works.
So, like, it's my usually you guys, whenever you're playing mine, you rarely play against a real monster. I usually make something up about it.
Yeah.
And so I just put in whatever, and then
but really, like,
stick with it.
Unless it's going to be a recurring monster, it doesn't even matter.
I mean, there's many times where I'll grab like, I don't know, I'll grab some giant spider and I'll just put those stats onto a kobold or something. Some kobold with more legs, you know.
Yeah.
And I just gotta remember which monster I used. Even then, it doesn't really remember because no one remembers. So it's not.
No one remembers. No. I don't think I ever once thought, is this kobold a spider?
I think this kobold might be a spider. He's shooting webs at me.
he's got like a cloak on, and I'm like, oh, where are all those legs coming from? Yeah, I don't think. I guess I've never had any of that. When I've always just used, like, even when I'm running homebrew stuff, it was always in a time where I had a smartphone, and D&D resources online have always been pretty decent. They might not look super great, but you could always, like, Donjon's so amazing. I think the last time I ran a decent sized campaign, I was just like the Donjon king. I just had a Microsoft Surface tablet, and I was like, I need a monster, and I just look one up real quick and hit generate, and just run with it.
Yeah,
you're a little bit quiet, Eric. I don't know if that's
sorry,
placement thing. Yeah, I wanted to ask about, because so we talked a little bit about running pre-writtens. When you're running a homebrew, I guess this is mainly, I want to hear you guys' input, but mainly this is a question for me and Michael. When you're running a homebrew campaign,
mm-hmm.
how do you plan your story beats, and based on like when the party decides to go do certain things?
I'm interested in hearing you guys' answer to this.
For me, I mainly want to talk about like the sort of the end of campaign 1, because I don't want to give too much away about what's happening in this campaign.
Yeah.
But towards the end of campaign 1, I had like an idea of the big bad at the end.
Okay.
And around what level I wanted you guys to be when you got there.
Okay.
And then I don't know if you noticed, you leveled a little quick at the end there because you guys went there a little faster than I had anticipated. It's like, oh, yeah. you got another level.
It's not something that I noticed, honestly. I mean, probably at the time I thought, man, we're leveling up fast. But in retrospect, looking back on it, I honestly couldn't have told you if we leveled up fast at the end or not. That's just like how that goes, I think, most of the time. What about you, Michael? How do you reconcile that?
So I pretty much build from like the ground up, I suppose. What we did here with the new one, we made a whole map, it's a little different than what I usually do. Typically I build, I do my campaign 1 session at a time.
Yeah.
So I plan the next session, and then depending on what you guys are interested in, or I think that you guys are interested in, then the story kind of goes that way, and I kind of built that way. I have in my head how I kind of want things to wrap up, but in my 4 or 5 campaigns, whatever that I've done, I don't think I've ever had what I planned at the end actually happen at the end.
I think
so. Typically, our campaigns go, I think, a much better way than I originally planned.
Yeah.
But because I used to do where, you kind of plan the thing out and you say, okay, I want you to get there, and then you go to this point, and you go to this point. Mm-hmm. I started doing it where I plan the next session, and that's it. I don't even worry about the ones after that. And then whatever happens in the next session, then I start skewing things off that way.
I think that's how, naturally that's how I did it when I DM'd in the past, which is like, I'm only doing in the moment stuff. I don't really have multiple sessions planned out. I don't have lots of things going on. It's like, here's my beginning. We're starting in the tavern, and it would be cool if they fought this monster, and I don't have a level. It was more like a feeling thing. They go, we want to go to the nearest barn and beat up a bunch of rats. And I'm like, all right, well, there's a barn right outside the town. Imagine that.
For you.
Lucky for you. It's like whatever they said they wanted to do, I just like made that part on the fly, it seemed. Because that's how modules always ended up for me. I'd start a module, which I've never finished a full module, DMing one. But it'd always start, I finished Phandelver. It'd always start and it'd be like, all right, I want them to do this, this, and this. And then immediately they're like, I'm going to go kill the captain of the guard. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. How does that fit into the story where you're fighting this vampire or whatever, or this dragon or whatever?
Found whenever I like plan things out, like if I'm trying to make a bad guy, or trying to make you guys get to somewhere, I feel like I force things too much. And if I just plan it one session at a time, then it kind of frees me up to not have something that I want to happen, or I feel like I force things too much if I.
It also is like, if you have interesting characters, they can become the bad villain just by the players interacting with them. Right.
And you don't want to introduce this bad guy that no one cares about. Put all this effort into making this big bad guy, and they're like, whatever, we're going to go this way.
Yeah, I don't even realize what's he doing. Oh, he's only torturing normal people. Well, I don't really care.
What about because you say you do your stuff like one session at a time, but you have a general idea. How do you do? Because like a few weeks ago, you guys in my campaign, you were like talking about doing like 3 different things the next week, and I was like, okay. I got to go write stuff for 3 potential outcomes. And I ended up writing stuff. And now one of those things that I spent quite a bit of time on, because it kept changing.
We
one
don't know
of those things probably doesn't even get seen now because that character is dead. So I'm curious to know, do you like try hard to get the party to go in a direction by the end of the night?
You just gave us a spoiler, dude. A couple weeks ago, you were like, "Well, you don't know if he's dead." Now you're like, "He's dead."
Well, you don't know if he's dead. Yeah,
okay.
He's unlikely to be heard from.
Yeah,
again,
I know. Yes, I got you.
That is tricky. You always try to figure out. I always try to get a hint at where you guys are going to go before I start planning it. But shout out to Sly Flourish with the 10 secrets and clues. Because every session I have 10 things that I may want, like just like a secret about the lore or a secret about someone's backstory or whatever, just sort of sprinkled in there. There's no specific place where you're going to find this information. It's just ready for me to give out to you. So if you say you guys are going to go to some woodsman's camp, but at the end you got, we're going to go to this cave instead. Well, I still have the same secrets and clues that I can sprinkle in wherever I want.
Yeah.
To try to keep some sort of a story going.
That's the players don't know the plan kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I've definitely done that before. Like, oh, you guys hey, look what you found in this room, though, that I did not plan for.
It's this thing you've been looking for.
That comes in very handy, like, because you guys go to different places that you don't plan for, but you still have stuff that you can slide in and make it sound like you knew what you were doing.
Fake until you make it.
I just watched a deal. They had a GM roundtable with Matt Mercer, Brennan Lee Mulligan, and Abria Iyengar. And the way Brennan talked about DMing was pretty good. He said basically it's like your players are like a water source, and the player characters always want to take the shortest path, the path of least resistance to where you're going to go. And as a DM, your job is to make that water path go in a different direction, but so that, because if it goes in a straight line, your player character will be happy, but your players won't be. So that's something that I have tried to do, but didn't put it into so many words. Is just trying to put those obstacles out there that are just enough in your way to make you not one shot everything, right?
I get what you're saying, but sometimes that's just how it goes. He said
it better.
Yeah, I figured he had a much more eloquent flow to his language than you did. I think but sometimes it's just burn.
Well said. Well said.
He did it better.
He did it better. that's just how it is sometimes, though, dude. You set stuff up and nobody finds it, and nothing happens, and or bad rolls happen and people don't find stuff, or you set up a big guy that they're supposed to fight and they build up to it for weeks, and then the guy gets pushed over like he's a nobody. I think that happened in your campaign, Michael, a few times.
Oh yeah.
Where you're like, this guy's gonna be the one. He's a big tough guy. Yep. And then we cast Hold Person.
Stop making humanoid BBEGs.
Murderlate the guy, just pound him down.
You're never fighting another humanoid again.
You go to cast Hold Person. Little did you know he has a tiny mutated tail. Not humanoid.
He's a monster.
He's a monster.
After that guy, everyone had the save thing, whatever you call it.
Legendary
yeah. They all had legendary resistances after that.
The last guy that had that happen to was the Pirate Lord, right?
Was it him or the Necromancer in the Frog Town?
Saltport, yeah, I think was the...
Maybe that was him, yeah. We didn't do that. I mean, Hold Person's a pretty high level spell, right? So it took us a while to
spell.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude.
Hold Monster is a 5th level. So.
5th level. Okay, yeah. I know we fought that one Necromancer outside of the forest that one time, and we held him in place too, but not with Hold Person.
I remember. Yeah.
The Max, the Earthen Grasp.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Yep, I grabbed him with that.
There's always something.
There's always something, dude. It's like, how can I cheese this fight? But I mean, like I said, that's just how it goes sometimes, and sometimes straight
memorable
path
stuff.
Yeah. Wasn't it hilarious that your boss died in one hit? Yucky, yucky, yuck.
You never would have remembered it if you took 10 rounds to take the guy down.
Yeah. It was a big epic fight. I don't know. The last fight in that last campaign was memorable because it was huge and everything was just massive and we were doing hundreds of damage around.
It was ridiculous, but it was fun.
Ridiculous.
It was pretty epic.
So ridiculous when you're like, all right, I hit him for 75 damage and he's like, he brushes it off and you're like, bastard. That's the most damage I've ever done.
How much time do you guys spend trying to balance an encounter, specifically for your group? Because I know that there's suggestions on CR it's terrible, but it's necessary for certain things. But there are suggestions on how many of what CR for how many of what level your players are. But how much time do you spend trying to balance it specifically for the makeup of your group?
I'm going to start with this one because I think I do it different than you guys.
Okay.
And the answer is none. I spend no time balancing anything. I don't really do any of that. I grab a couple monsters and I go, okay, I have a group. It's this big. I want them to fight these monsters and I want this fight to be hard. I want them to be beat up by the end of this fight. Therefore, the monsters do an amount of damage and take an amount of damage equivalent to the amount of damage and health that the players are losing. So if the players are really hammering this dude, he just gets a little extra health and he hits them back until they're to a state where I think, this was a decent fight. And then I let them win eventually. But I mean, I'm not saying it's always an insta win. Players can obviously die, but it has nothing to do with the monster's HP. It starts as that as a base, but if he has 100 HP and they deal 100 damage in 2 rounds, and I wanted it to be a 4 or 5 round fight, I just extend it because the players don't have any frame of reference for how much health it's supposed to have.
Okay.
And I totally flub. I flub rolls. I do everything I can to make the fight last as long as I think it should last for the type of fight I want it to be. It has nothing to do with health or dice or anything.
I will say that it sounds pretty good, but as a player playing in that, it makes you feel it doesn't matter how much I do. It just determines on how much damage I take.
But the thing is, you're looking at it from a perspective that it's happening.
I know. That's where I'm saying as the player in that, it was probably enjoyable. Man, that was an awesome fight.
Yeah.
But hearing that from your DM going, yeah, I just push their health or flub up stuff. It's
that's why I've never told you. It's I've run.
I don't know. You tell me after we play.
I tell you because you're the person who's interested, right? but no one else cares how it's run or how it works. I've run campaigns with you and your buddies. I did Phandelver with you guys. Yeah. I did that the whole campaign.
How about you, Michael?
I don't balance. I just pick whatever sort of right for the. I know my monsters well enough, and I know kind of what damage they're going to do. But I try to have an easy fight and a difficult fight. I don't try to have even fights. I try to have either difficult or easy fights. And but I don't really like try to balance it, because anytime I try to balance it, it never works out. So you guys all know, all the players have been playing for a long time. They know what they can do and all that. So I don't really worry about that. I don't flub any numbers though, because I find that if I do that, then I start I don't like the way that it comes out.
I flubbed the numbers because I had a situation specifically that got me into doing that, where it was just one of those freak of nature nights where I was like, I had my DM screen and I was rolling, and it was like 18, 18, 20, 20, 19, 17. And my players are all like level 3, and I'm decimating them. And I'm like, this can't go on, right? Like, they're not going to quit because they're newer players.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on, if you got newer players, then yeah, you probably have to be a little bit hands.
Yeah.
But if you got players that have been playing for years, then yeah, gloves are off.
Gloves are off.
They know if they need to run or how the fight's going. And if you start doing that, then it kind of ruins everything, because then every fight you get in, you're like, well, I'm not going to die.
Most campaigns, well, I mean, I've killed players, but most campaigns I run typically are with newer players. Yeah. Almost all the ones I've done are with newer players, where like only one player in the group has played any amount. And that, like, I find that the system that I use works pretty good for that, because it makes them feel like the fight's a struggle. Or if I want them to have an easy win, I let them have an easy win, and it's awesome. But you can't have too many easy wins in a row, right?
I like rolling out in the open because that makes it feel a little bit more real, because you never know if the 20's coming up and you've got 5 hit points.
Oh yeah, that has its own.
If it's behind a screen, it's you may be just flubbing it, But
yeah, maybe.
Out in the open.
With I think with a more experienced group, I probably wouldn't do that. But that's not typically what I play with. Typically, it's like friends that I have that haven't played D&D, a la Joe's friends, or like another friend of ours that has never played, and he goes, "I'd really like to play some D&D. Would you DM a session?" And then I can just. It's whatever, right? It's baby hands a little bit, because they're not going to quit a fight no matter what. Nobody ever wants to run. I think even experienced players are like hesitant to run from a fight.
Yeah, I have an example of that pretty recent.
That was just one player. That was not the group.
There's 13 more people coming over, just staying in the tree. Yep.
Don't wrap me up into that. That wasn't.
Man. As far as balancing, I tend to try. I put a lot into trying to balance fights, and then I get better at it as the session goes on. Like, I got decent at it at the end of the last campaign. I felt, and then starting over. We talked about this a little bit last week, I think, but starting over in this campaign, it was a little hard at those early ones, because I was still tilted towards the heavier workload.
You have to reset that expectation where, like,
yeah. And I think that a lot of the challenge of a fight is how strategically good the monsters are. Like, if your monsters are, especially like early in a campaign, I'll just be like, yeah, it's just a typical aggro table, just like World of Warcraft. Like, there's someone out in front, they're all going to hit that guy, because they're going to do that. But as they get a little longer, the monsters are going to start aiming for those guys in the back that keep healing everyone, and then that's when it becomes more difficult.
The biggest thing that affects the challenge, because dice rolls always affect, who knows how the challenge is going to go.
Luck, yeah.
Is the number of opponents. Like, if you've got one guy, no matter, it could be twice the character's level, 3 times the character's level, and the character will probably still beat it. He may beat him down, but they'll probably still take him out. But if it's like 15 kobolds, then it doesn't matter. They're really weak, but there's just so many of them.
And that's just
like they're tying down the clerics, they're tying down the archers. Then it just that I think is worse than one big guy.
Yeah, that is always, it always feels harder than one big guy, because one big guy, like, it's like what happened on Monday. It's like he was one-shotting those guys, and sure, their plus to hit was like nothing, and he had high AC, but it's just a numbers game at that point. Like, eventually they're gonna hit you, and eventually they're gonna hit you enough that you die.
Yeah, until you get those big AoE spells, and then the multiple small guys becomes very easy.
Then you have to split them up a little more, I think, and then it's a little harder. Like, Fireball is awesome. I spent a whole campaign spamming Fireball.
I remember the fight in Michael's campaign, that old temple that we like buried the crack in. All those imps came out, and I was like, oh. hey Eric, there's something juicy over there.
One Fireball.
And then Michael's like, all right. He's like moving out all these little imps. One shot, they're all gone.
that was a make the party feel good.
I thought it might have been. Yeah.
I throw those in every once in a while. We had kobolds the other day in the other session with you guys slaughtered, and that's what those are. Those are to make you feel.
Yeah. It's great to have those fights where you win real easy. It's like, you can't have too many of those, though, because then it feels like everything's too easy. That's a weird thing.
Right.
We had that fight
ups and downs.
Ups and downs. You got to have that up. Dude, Sly Flourish, man. Everyone, like, you want a DM? Look that guy up. He's great. It's freaking fantastic. We did that big fight when we tried to hold the castle in your campaign, the long one, and I shot out that army. That was like a sick moment that I remember, because I was like, all right.
In my campaign?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and they were marching up. Yeah, I wasn't expecting... Those guys were tough. Yeah. That was supposed to be a tough fight, and you just, like, you charged up your Fireball with sorcery points, and you rolled, like, all sixes. Yeah. It was ridiculous.
I rolled, like, insane damage and just wiped them out, and I was like, I am the god of this realm! I'm, like, standing on the wall, light, like, scene from a movie, wind blowing my hair back. I will kill you all. That's what it feels like when you can get those moments. That's something I miss playing a fighter, where it's like, there is nothing like that when you're, no matter how good of a fighter you are. I haven't had that moment where I feel like, hell yeah, I'm killing these guys. One time so far in Isaac's campaign, it was with that 1v1. That was
stupid
great. That was great. That was like a fantastic, like, oh, my character's a freaking boss. Check this out. But that's just luck, right? But I guess the Fireball was luck too.
It's all somewhat luck. You have to roll well.
And I just like opened with that crit and took that dude out, and that feels awesome, dude. But I do miss being able to take out a lot of people all at once.
I also wanted to talk about magic items and how powerful and when do you like to introduce them to a campaign?
I really liked what we did. That campaign we ran before the big one, like that little vampire one, I think, you know.
Little vampire one.
Yours, Michael. You ran this one when we were still at the store.
Oh yeah.
You were like handing out trivial magic items.
Oh yeah.
Pretty often, and I thought that was really entertaining. I had like the skull that talked to people, and somebody had the cape that blew in the wind all the time.
I found a book on like RPG, whatever it is,
RPG drive-through, drive-through RPG,
and it was just like, I think it was just like mundane magical items or something, and that's where most of those came from.
It was great.
Like they didn't really do any good; they just sort of added little flavors.
And that felt good, because you want to get magic items. If you're a player and you know what magic items are, you're like, give me some magic items, baby. But when you start handing out like, oh yeah, this is Billy, he just joined our group, and we gave him 2 magic swords, a magic crossbow, a magic chest plate, and some magic boots, and now he could go kill Balthazar, the god of the underworld, by himself, because we just had this stuff sitting in a chest over there. You know what I mean? Like it ramps so quickly, where once you have a few magic items, you're punching way over your class, you know?
I think as a DM, when I'm ready for it to go from like gritty survival to like the high fantasy, that's when magic items start going out. Because if you're in that trying to survive level 2, 3, whatever, and you're getting beat down by everything, if you throw magic items in there, then it's going to change it.
Yeah, because what are the odds you walk into a cave and there's like some epic magic sword in there that some other more powerful adventurer didn't find before you know?
Yeah.
And then
it's cool whenever magic items have sort of a story or sort of a quirkiness to them. Rather than just, there's a +1 sword.
There's a +1 sword. Yeah.
Do you try to balance what you give, or do you just like roll on a random table or somewhere in between?
I just give whatever the players are kind of looking for.
All right.
if there's a fighter who uses a greatsword, then I try to find a greatsword for him.
Are there any because like I've been going through magic items and I've seen some like, oh, this just breaks my campaign. Or does it? And I like go back and forth and try to decide.
Yeah, throw them out there. It depends on what level they are. level 10 or so, then yeah, get them out there. That's when things get fun.
The magic portal carpet. That was
when I put that out, I didn't think about that being a break the campaign magic item. It wasn't until after that I realized it was a breaking the campaign magic item.
It completely I felt like it totally derailed that campaign. We were
I've said this before. It made the campaign 10 times more fun than it was when I had planned.
Because we were like a pretty run of the mill, like rescue the people from the camps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then it became like a cosmic war between.
Yeah, it was fetch quest on the prison island. Basically, was the campaign.
Yeah. And then it went completely off the rails. It was so freaking amazing that run where we were out of spell slots and we were portal hopping every hour or whatever, and we were trying to like close everything down. That was a wild turning point in that campaign.
And to the point we were talking about before, balancing fights, because you had said that in the early parts of that campaign, it was a lot of kiting going on. Were you trying to balance encounters to deal with that? Or were you just throwing whatever you wanted to at them, and then they were coming up with ways to deal with it?
I'm interested in this answer.
Talking to me?
Yeah.
When?
The beginning of that Friday campaign, when we were all like,
oh, that was rough.
Kiting everything because we didn't have a fighter or anything.
You didn't have a healer. You didn't have a healer or a fighter, did you?
No.
Nope.
Yeah.
No
it was
tanks.
Just a bunch of scrawny mages and a bowman.
Yeah.
I think what did I do then? I think I mostly just played poor tactics. I think it's basically what it ended up being. Because if I played smart, I would have wiped them out easy. I'd throw them like something out that they should have been able to handle, and like halfway through the fight, I realized, oh, this is gonna go bad. So I'll just stick on the guy that has the most hit points or whatever that has the AC, and help.
We tried
a little bit.
We tried to be creative as players, but like, there's only so much you can do with run away and shoot. That's what I have to do. Like, this isn't exciting, but the best thing for me to do is to hide and shoot. And it's so hard to cover hide in D&D and shoot because everyone moves the same distance for the most part.
Yeah.
So unless you're like a monk who can run 60 feet around, without dashing, if you run, turn around and shoot, they're going to catch you next turn.
What was I going to say? I was going to say something.
Uh-oh. Joe, you have anything to add while he's trying to think?
I don't have a ton of experience DMing.
Fair enough.
I've only DM'd one session, which was real easy to plan for. Whenever you go, okay, these people don't have any idea. You can lead them wherever you want to lead them. They've never played before, so they're looking at you to like kind of push them in certain directions.
You should prepare. I remember when it was only like a year ago when I did that solo campaign for you.
Yep.
You should prep one of those and let me play it.
Okay.
Yeah, do it, dude. It's a ton of fun. It was a ton of fun. I prepped that campaign. It's the first time I'd ever done one where there was only one player character. And I mean, it didn't go perfect, but it was still decently fun.
You did a thing on Friday. We did the, it was like the apocalypse kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
The bubble
all out of gum.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that one, man, it was so much more nerve-wracking going into that than it was with new players. I was like, even though it wasn't Dungeons and Dragons, it was still just like playing, like DMing for players who are experienced at role playing games.
I think
it was way different. It felt like I had a lot more pressure that I put on myself, which probably just ended up making everything worse.
Except like no one notices, right? Like
it's
like totally in your head, totally in your head. I think that the pressure now to be a DM post Critical Role success, new players now expect a lot more than they used to. I haven't done a full new player group since like the Critical Role like blast has happened that has elevated D&D from, you know, the nerds in the basement are playing to everybody wants to play D&D. And I think that if I got a group of people who are like, yo, Eric, you know the most about D&D. We all love Critical Role. Would you run a campaign for us? I'd be like, I mean, yeah, I will, but it's not going to be like Critical Role. I can guarantee it.
Critical Role is what got me really into it. Because I played like 2 or 3 times maybe with Michael, you guys on Sunday, which when I would be visiting, I would be like, okay, I'll come play. But what really got me into it was Critical Role was about so much more about storytelling than any other D&D that I had played. Like whenever I would come to you guys on Sunday, it was more about like hanging out and then doing like the combats, the damage, the numbers.
Some of those,
and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But then I watched I watched Critical Role and I was like, oh, this can be like a television series. This can be totally in depth as you want to go, and that's what really got me into wanting to do it.
Yeah, there were some interesting story beats that happened in some of those campaigns, but it's always hard if you're just coming in for a day, even if it's the most even if it's the most story rich campaign in the world. If you show up for a day and you don't know anything about it, it is going to be like you're just sitting there and someone goes, "Hey man, time to roll some dice," and you're like, "Okay," and you roll. You know, that's it. Yeah. You don't have any investment in anything.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I guess also just watching the cast members be just involved, like wanting to be just actually doing the role play and like watching other cast members watching other character interactions and having emotions about them, like, oh, you can feel things. That's allowed.
How have you guys
speaking of that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Speaking about getting players to roleplay, what are some tactics that you guys use, the more experienced DMs, to try and get your players to kind of roleplay a little bit more?
Isaac is better at this than I am, so I'm eager to hear what he says.
The big things that I tried to do, because I really wanted you guys to roleplay and talk to each other and not just be like, I have 5 players each taking their turn to talk to me, and then the game continues. I wanted you guys to interact. So the things that I did to try to encourage it is, one, I'm not as good about it as I want to be, but I tried to give a lot of the NPCs different voices so that they feel more real, and so that it feels like it's okay to roleplay because I'm doing it. And another big thing was always asking if there was anything you guys want to talk about, especially during like long road trips or during watches. I try to give you guys, if there's just anything you guys want to talk about, please do so. Otherwise, we can move on. And then if there's anything you guys want to talk about, I try to make sure I set space aside for that.
Yeah, it's like it sounds like a light nudge system. You're light nudging, but you have to have players that are willing to
definitely
open up and do that kind of thing.
Yep.
Because I've never run a campaign where people were like hardcore role playing their characters. Everyone's character was just them with a sword, or them but can shoot fire out their hands.
Yeah, but that was the big 2 things that I tried to do to get you guys to role play more, was just role playing myself with the NPCs. Try to give some sort of not everything's just going to be like, yes, here's the information you need from me. Bye. Tried to make it to where you had to interact with those characters a little bit, and then like I said, I really try to make sure that you guys have a chance to talk to each other on like watches or travels and stuff. And I try to set up. I mean, I try to set up things that might spur conversation. Like in the first campaign, whenever I let you guys ran into and found out Ray's character's family, like those points that were kind of glanced over at the moment. But I tried to make sure that the entire party sort of heard about those. So you'd be like, "Hey, what's up with that?" You know, and then you guys could have those conversations amongst yourselves.
And it just gets better over time. Like I think a lot of groups never get there because they never last more than 4 or 5 sessions.
Yeah, and our Friday night one got noticeably better from the beginning to the end.
Oh yeah, if you went back to when we started, it was what it was what I said. It was like we were hanging out, we were rolling dice, and our characters weren't really characters; they were just us.
Yep.
But by the end of it,
most didn't have a backstory.
Yeah, they didn't have a backstory.
I noticed I was watching a little bit of that Exandria Calamity, and there's a part where Sam gives this real big long speech, and at the end, Brendan was like,
"I saw
normally I'd make you roll for this, but because of the way that you phrased and role played, I'm going to give it to you." I think that could be a very good tool to use to help people want to role play more. It's not all the time, of course, but every now and again, if somebody kind of does something a little bit more out of their comfort zone or something, you reward them with cool little moments like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to do a smaller version of that. If you're talking to someone and you make an actual like good argument, then you get like advantage, or I lower the DC.
Yeah.
And then have you roll. But yeah, then I was curious to know, were you guys where was the role playing situation before I got there?
It was me and Eric talking to each other.
Yeah,
pretty much. Those two did the talking.
Me and Eric were the face. I mean, sorry, me and Joe were the face of the group, and then
it wasn't until really till about the end. You came in and helped out a lot, and then the other two finally started opening up. Just took some time.
And we were.
And that is a big thing, you got to have people get comfortable and open up more to it. But
now that the group's been together longer, it's just now we know that the normal is playing your character as a character and not just. That was a hard thing for me, like separating what my character would do from what me, the guy controlling him, would do, because there are definitely situations that are like, why in the hell would I do that? From up here looking down, it's like, don't do that. You're dumb. That's a stupid decision. But the character doesn't have all that knowledge, right? They don't have.
Yeah.
They're in the world is how I have to think about it, and I have to be like, they make decisions to protect their life, not to do the coolest thing all the time, kind of thing.
Yeah, and then to speak to the point of just giving time to like sort of make the trust happen for role playing, that's sort of one of the goals that was one of the objectives of what I was trying to do with giving NPCs different voices and more of a character, is to open up that it's like, it's okay to be silly, it's okay to be foolish. That way, it's because it can feel making yourself vulnerable by role playing can feel vulnerable. So
vulnerable.
It's so if you can, that's what I was trying to do is be vulnerable as a character when I'm DMing those characters, to make everyone else feel a little bit more comfortable doing it.
And that went a long way. You know what I mean? Because
I noticed the one time I did like really try to DM, doing voices really helps bring out people want to talk a little bit more whenever you're doing voices as the DM and stuff, and you're kind of creating a facade for your characters. And I think one of the biggest tools for getting people to like start getting into that mindset was the how do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Let them describe what their character's doing. It kind of gives them that chance to start being creative in their own right. And then I used if they did something real cool and crazy, I had them roll to see if they did like an athletics check or something. You still get the kill, obviously, but maybe you like fumbled up and you tripped and it just kind of happened to slide in there or something. I don't know.
The actual phrase, how do you want to do this? I tried to avoid it really hard in campaign 1 because I was like, I don't want to copy. But then for campaign 2, I like during the writing of it and all that stuff, it's I think it's pretty obvious. And if it's not, it's certainly is the case that I got a lot of inspiration from Critical Role. It's why I started playing as much as I do. So I was like, you know what? Rather than trying to walk or skirt around this, I'll just give credit where credit's due. I'll just say, how do you want to do this? And everyone knows what it means, right?
Guys, it's been great not knowing any of these references. I get to experience it in the moment. You do this cool thing and I'm like, shit, that was pretty dope. And I don't have to I don't ever have to know that Matt Mercer or someone else did it first.
Well, how do you want to do this is a famous phrase at this point. I figured you would even know that not having watched it, but
nope. I mean, like, I did know eventually because
he thought you were the clever one that came up with it. You spoiled it.
You spoiled it. No, I mean, I did hear it. I saw a clip from a Critical Role episode.
Stole this from Isaac.
Yeah, right. He's watching our streams. He was one of the 4 people in there. Yeah, like I saw Matt Mercer say it, but I never I was like, okay, I guess it's just something some people say. Like I have no frame of reference for like, is this a thing that he started or is this just like a general thing that I don't know about because I'm disconnected. I'm so disconnected from, funnily enough, I'm so disconnected from other D&D content online.
Yeah.
I think the only like watched campaign that I watched all the way through was the Harmon Quest, but that's because it was animated. They had cool animation parts. And, like, they were getting cool famous people on to do it that I knew. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to tangent right here. Okay. What do you guys think about this? Because in Harmon Quest, I don't think it is D&D. I think they're playing Pathfinder, but that's aside the point. The players do not roll any dice in that campaign. The players go, and I assume that they're doing this because they had a rotating cast of like new people who had never played before, and the DM just handled everything. He goes like, "What do you want to do?" And they
encourage the story rather than
and like choosing your character and everything. And he goes, "What do you guys want to do?" And would be like, I want to take this whip that it says my character sheet has, and I want to flail it over my head in a specific way, and I want to crack them. And then the DM would be like, "All right," and he'd roll some dice, and he'd be like, "All right, you do that. This is how," you know what I mean? He doesn't even have to describe what happens because the players are focused way more on doing cool stuff and having good story beats happen than they are worried about their character and how to optimize it and everything.
If I were to say I swing and Isaac rolls my D20, that's it. I'm leaving. Packing my bags and leaving. No one touches my D20. I roll that.
I think that is potentially very cool for new players. But for experienced players, that takes away a lot of the fun, I think.
Yeah, for the right players. I think it is for the right players kind of thing. But I always thought it was interesting because it's the only time I've ever seen it played that way. And it seemed perfect for that because when you have a new person come in every week and you just set a piece of paper in front of them covered in numbers and you go, okay, we're going to play this game in front of an audience.
I've seen that on Critical Role where someone comes in and they like roll the dice. Okay, what do I do now? And someone has to point to it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, roll a D20. What's a D20?
It really slows the game down. So I get it.
Yeah.
New players.
Another question I wanted to talk about was how careful are you with killing or not killing player characters, especially if they have like taken time to write a backstory?
You guys, you two will have answers for this. I don't really.
You can give a theoretical answer.
I can give my opinion on what.
Give your opinion. Let's hear Joe and me, and then we'll get the more experienced opinion on this.
Go for it. Think?
Oh, me first?
Yeah.
I just don't ever think about it. I haven't. I think theoretically, if someone wrote me a big backstory and they really loved their character, I would try my hardest not to kill them, but at the same time, is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, if they do something dumb, I can't be like every time, here's the Deus Ex Machina that saved you from this freaking stupid thing you did for the third time. Eventually, you have to be like, okay, and then the guy stabs you. What? Yeah, and now you're down, and you ran away from the party, so they're gonna keep stabbing you. No, and you're dead, and you're actually dead, and you're not coming back. I'll need a new character sheet by next week. But the problem with that is like, how new or experienced are your players? I feel like that's coming up a lot, but that's a big one. When they're brand new players, they probably don't have an attachment to their character really, and if they die, they're like, okay, cool, I get to make another character. But a more experienced player might be more attached because they're writing bigger, more complicated backstories, or they're into the campaign more, they're into their character more because they've put more effort into it. The last decent sized campaign I ran all the players were new, and I gave them characters. I had just a stack of pre-made characters, and if they died, I handed them another one.
You were resurrected as flip through his paper.
Actually, no, wait. I reincarnated them every time. That's how I sold it. I every time they died, because they died a lot, because I was killing them a lot, I would be like, if you die, I'm going to roll in this reincarnation table, and you come back as the same character, but a different race every time. And it was fun.
For me, I know as a player, I might write a big backstory, but if my character dies, I don't really get too upset about it. It sucks, but I'm not like mad. So whenever I'm playing, if I was DMing, I think I would be kind of like, if you put yourself in a position and you get killed, you get killed. I'm not going to sit there and just be like, okay, all your teammates are around, but the bad guy's just going to keep killing you when you go down. But if it happens, it happens. I'm not trying to kill I wouldn't try to kill my players, but if I'm rolling crazy well, I just happen to be rolling crazy well. If someone ends up getting killed, that's just fate. It's just what's supposed to happen.
Yeah. It's not DM versus players.
Right.
Yeah. But that being said, like, if I would have died at the very end of that last campaign on Friday, I probably would have been all right. But if I'd have died 3 weeks before the last battle with that character that I'd had the whole campaign, that would have been a bummer. that would have been like okay, well, I don't think I really care what happens at the end now,
As a player, when I made my characters, I kind of liked it when they died, as long as it was a good death, because that's their story.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a Tasha Yar kind of death, as long as it's like they go out in style, they do it, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And as a DM, I mean, I don't go out to like kill anyone, but if it's as long as it's a good moment or a meaningful moment, then yeah, it's fine. I'm not going to go out and try to kill somebody, but I'm not going to pull my punches.
Yeah.
Also,
Joe sacrificed himself, and
we have the five death save thing, which I added in, which kind of helped.
Yeah.
So that way, helped a little bit of that, but yeah, I don't pull my punches, but I don't want to kill anybody. But if it's the right time, you know what I mean?
It's the right time to go. It's the right time to go.
If I'm having a big battle, and you guys know you're getting into a big battle, it's a big boss fight, then if just as the circumstances go, I'm not going to aim for someone. But if it just happens that way, then that's just the way it goes.
That's how she be.
Would you ever have a circumstance where a big boss would be aiming for a particular character?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if this is the big bad in their backstory, then
and they die to it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
That was a big thing with Shiro.
Yeah, I had that sim. That was, we were talking about that before, where if I plan things out, I feel like I force things too much. I wish I had let you guys just kill him. I made him. I gave him I had him an amulet so he could teleport away and get away from you guys. I wish I hadn't done that. It would be much more satisfying if he'd actually gotten a kill in there. But instead, he ran away, and it was uneventful. But that was an instance where he was focusing solely on Shiro. He didn't care about anyone else.
Yeah.
I kind of like that he got away from my perspective, because I was like, oh, we're gonna, next time we see him, I'm gonna pull out all the stops.
Yeah, I didn't have a good bad guy, and so I was like, I gotta come up with some sort of like a real bad guy, and so I gave him the amulet to teleport. And then after he got away, I was like, I kind of wish I had.
Did we ever go get him?
No,
I didn't think so.
He was out raising demons on some other island, and you guys are like, that island with the flying snake things.
Yeah, that's a future us problem, not a right now problem.
Yeah,
there was a lot of good villains in that campaign, though. I felt like so.
Yeah,
another one wasn't necessary.
So, yeah, I don't want to kill players.
Yes,
especially
tell us of the moral conundrum with that last killing.
Especially when you guys are seemingly very close to going into that character's backstory. But
tell me about it.
I wasn't going to be like, oh, they keep missing you. I can't believe it.
Yeah, you can't pull punches. Especially if the character puts himself in that situation. Typically, when we've had a death in my campaigns, I think usually the character like knows it's coming. It's not like a situation that's like
it popped up
fluke unless Joe's involved.
Yeah, I people. But yeah, like with Yuri, that was definitely, I knew like this was it.
You sacrificed.
You sacrificed yourself for that one. Yeah.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Tell me about Rook's death, because he was set up to like take that campaign in a very specific direction, right? Because you had just given him that bag of all that stuff that we were going to go do the thing and bring back this god.
Oh, yeah.
And then he died.
That's another note for playing one session at a time.
I don't know. It felt cool, though. Like that there was going to be certain like consequences of it, though.
Right. Yeah.
So,
because I anticipated you bringing that god back, and it was going to cause all kinds of things. I had etched a few things in, but mostly it's in my head. Any future stuff is mostly just in my head. I etched down. I try to plan the one session because I try to make that one session exciting. If I don't do that, I find myself doing a lot of filler sessions to get to an exciting point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than I just have the one session. And so that was just sort of in the back of my mind. Like when they get her out of the Nine Hells, then she's going to be very angry, and it's going to take a twist.
That would have been, but it could have been just as interesting doing that as doing what we ended up doing.
Yeah. Another thing, I didn't know how, even in that campaign, you guys sided with you sided against the gods, and I didn't know if you're going to side with the gods or with the Terrassians.
We spent like a whole episode arguing about it.
Yeah, that's how I get my party to talk, is just gray areas.
I think that was one of my best arguments, like in character arguments, right there, dude.
Yeah, somehow Isaac, every character he made ended up having a bad god. They weren't supposed to be. They were just misunderstood.
It just turned out to be massive D-bags.
Because writing the backstory for the first character for Rook, I didn't really know what you guys were doing. So I just wrote something that was, he was an adventurer, la la la, and he's gonna wind up here. And then when I got into the campaign and Rook died, the backstory that I went for with Victor, I was like, he's gonna have stuff that's specifically involved in what you guys are doing, as long as this is okay with Michael. And I gave it to Michael, and he's like, yep, sure.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm ready to be helpful to the party. And then it turned out that the god that I was with was someone the party ended up not liking at all.
Yeah, you were Raven, right?
Yeah. I was under the Raven, yeah.
Why did we end up not liking him? There was a reason.
Well, the reason that Victor stopped liking him, a couple big turning points was he communed with him once and asked if the Raven trusted him, and the Raven said no.
Oh, okay.
And so Victor was like, what? I've spent my life in devotion to you, and you don't trust me with the things you give me? That's I don't like this at all. And then later on, whenever we were doing the telepathic bond and we figured out that he was listening in, I was like, I'm done. I'm done with this god.
That's interesting though. See, that's like one of those things where it changes, and that's freaking sweet.
It was absolutely interesting for me. I don't know how much of you guys picked up on, but that was
the big
Victor's feeling.
The big discussion we had when we were in the book. The big argument we had.
That was so fun.
Yeah, that was an amazing. That was like an amazing.
You and I
moment.
were going back and forth, and Joe would pick up on one of our arguments, like that's a good point, and then you would make a point, and you go, oh, but that's a good point too, and I'd come back, and, well, that's a good point.
That was just a really awesome character moment. That like as a DM, I don't think you can plan that kind of thing.
What we talking about? What book?
When we were in
the book.
Oh, in the storybook.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me and or Victor and Finn were arguing over whether to participate in the book or just sit back and watch so we could then try to fix it. So if we watch what the outcome, then we know what happened and where it went wrong. And Finn's argument was we just should go for it right now. And I was like, but it won't change anything.
Yeah. That was a good one. And that was like a full 25-minute like back and forth. Like
I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, that was really good.
We were still arguing when the dragon lady just took off. She's like, wait a minute, I can hear you guys. I'm out of here. That was great.
I have a DM question.
All right.
Time. How do you plan your sessions? Is that too broad? Do you have a formula that you use? I can give you mine if you want me to give you a help.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm really eager to hear how Isaac does this because of how he gets player stories involved and all that. I just follow the Sly Flourish method, which Eric knows. But with each session, I got all 5 of my characters in there, and each character I put something in there that may pop up this session that relates to the backstory. It 2% of the time actually pops up, but occasionally it pops up. And then I do the 10 secrets and clues. So there's always a bunch of things like this book writes itself while they are in the story. This book was written by what's her face? Siru, is that her name? Yeah. This book was written by Siri Londa so she can try to figure out different outcomes of what happened in the past. And whether I reveal that or not is whether you find something or not. So then I got my little bit of background story in there. I got the secrets, and I put down my locations of things that I think might come up, of places that might come up, so I can kind of think about describing the things, like whether it's a cabin or a castle or a cave or whatever.
You're much more organized than me.
I'm far less organized than I used to be. I just recently found some of my stuff from whenever when I first started doing them. And I had like graph paper, and I had things driven out on graphs, and I had all my characters all printed out, all my NPCs and all my monsters. Yeah. I was like, man, I can never do this now.
I feel like I haven't actually put into practice a lot of the Sly Flourish things. I've always just like watched it. I haven't DM'd a lot recently. And I think my DMing method needs to be somewhere closer to where you're at, because I am such a like slapdash, make it up as I go kind of like, I have a vague idea of what's going to happen, and then I'm totally making everything up on the fly most of the time.
I kind of started doing that a little bit after Isaac joined us when we were doing online stuff. And I started using the Sly Flourish thing, and it made it so much better.
Yeah, I really need to like...
I think it was so much more interesting for me, and I think it was more interesting for you guys.
Yeah, I need to do that. I need to try that sometime, but it's like I'm already playing twice a week.
Yeah.
What about you, Isaac?
Okay. So it is very complicated. And Holly can attest to this. On Mondays, I'm like, if she tries to talk to me, I'm like, what do you want? Because when I start going to prep for a thing, my brain like spider webs out into all these different possibilities, because I have certain story beats that I want hit, and I know where those things are in the world. And there's always a chance that like you guys could come across one of them to start a sort of chain. So I have a document that has just loads of stuff written in it. And if I need to look at it, I can quickly look over. So when I prepare, I take a look at where my party is, and then start prepping all these different possibilities of things that could happen. And if you guys do thing A, then that sets off this list of events. If you do thing B, that sets off this list of events. And if you guys, I try to say, this is what happened last time. What do you want to do now? And if you guys pick a direction and go, great. Then I'll be ready for, hopefully ready for whatever direction you guys go. But if you guys are sort of at a loss for what to do, then I have thing D over here, like job board, that can set off those things for me. So for instance, this is that 2 or 3 weeks ago when you were talking about going to Atrix's place, I had a whole sort of small storyline written out for how that would happen if you went that way. I had a storyline written out for, I think, 2 other things that you could have possibly done that week, and then you chose to do go to the job board instead. And I was like, okay. And then I went back to look at my job board for that city, and I was like, okay, these are the things that are still on the job board. So that's what you got.
You cycle the stuff on the job board depending on how long it's been there?
Some of it, not all of it, but some of it, yeah.
You are by far the most structured DM I've ever met.
Yeah, that would drive me nuts trying to think of it that way.
I do not.
I can't do that. If I start thinking, what are they going to do? Then I know it's all over. I make my bad guys. I try to develop my bad guys well, and I just plan out what my bad guys are doing. And every week, their story progresses a little bit. Whether the party interacts with it or not, so be it. If the party wants to just do a little sandbox game, saving farmers from their crops or whatever, then so be it. Then the world's going to end somehow. But the bad guys are going to do the thing, and whether you guys interact with it or not is.
I mean, there's certainly an aspect of that for me, where there's other storylines happening without you. But yeah, I mean, ad-libbing, going from complete nothing to just starting to think of things on the fly is a weak spot for me. But that autistic brain is real good at trying to figure out all the variables of what could happen. So that's where my brain goes, and it gets bogged down. There are so many things you guys could choose to do that I try to plan for.
What's so funny is that's how I am with everything but DMing. I want to know every outcome possible before I even start. But when it's DMing, when it's D&D, I have already made the decision in my head that doesn't matter. Players are going to do what they're going to do, and I'm just going to react to it on the fly. And then we start the campaign, and I'm like, all right, what do you guys want to do? And they're like, we want to kill goats. And I'm like, all right, hell yeah. There's a goat farm right outside the city, and you're going to go there. And turns out the goats have devil teeth, and they're going to fight the hell out of you.
Part of all that setup that I do is hoping, I'm not as good at it as I want to be, but getting the NPCs that have somewhat of a personality, so that I'm prepared for if you guys run into some of them, so that I know, what they would be doing and that kind of thing. These last few weeks have been real easy because you guys have been in the jungle, so it's just setting up combats, and making sure that they happen accordingly. I set up for when you guys went up the mountain and when you went into the jungle. I set up a list of combats, and at the beginning, I had you roll for them to see which ones you would get, and then as some of those get taken off the list, they become less random. Like the last session, I didn't have you roll at all. So it was like, well, these are the ones that are left, and this is the order that makes sense for where they are. So we'll just do it like that.
I have
how much ad-libbing do you do?
Very little. Very, very little. I don't know if it comes across that way, but there is a very little ad-libbing. Most of it is pre-constructed. However, not to put you guys on a rail, I have 3 or 4 different rails.
All prepared.
Yeah.
And we're just at the switching station, choosing which rail to go down.
How much ad-libbing do you think that I do? That's a good question.
I think you do about 80% of ad-libbing, is my guess.
I think it's a little less than that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. I think the good moments are ad-libbed, and then I grow on that.
The good moments.
You grow on like when you're ad-libbing, like me, which is 90% probably. It's like, are they doing something cool? Let's just pursue this to its full degree.
I'll give you my favorite ad-lib.
Okay.
We were playing on Friday night, and I noticed like the last week and this week, Francisco looking kind of bored. So you guys meet a pirate ship, and he says, "Volder, is that you?" I just winged it, and I was like, and at the end of that, I was like, "Crap, who's Volder?"
Now I gotta go right.
So I gotta make up something for this.
And that was ad-libbed.
Yeah. So then,
see, that's fantastic. That's like one of the better. Like that's an awesome.
What am I gonna do with this? It's got to be a doppelganger of some kind. And then I was remembering David's backstory of not remembering what he was.
Yeah.
And they never got along. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be perfect if they like were related somehow? So yeah, that was.
I often wondered if when I figured out they were brothers, if it was already set that way, or if me saying that made you go, "Oh, that would be cool."
Yeah, I had that plan for a while. It took me about a week to figure out what I was going to do with it. So there was a long time of them being brothers.
That's freaking great, dude.
That was probably my most fun moment playing D&D, is figuring that one thing out. I was like, I think I figured something out, guys. And then it ended up being true. It felt so cool. That was great.
Yeah, I learned a lot in that campaign. That campaign was great.
Yeah.
So good. Well, anything else you guys want to talk about? We've been going for a while now.
Yeah, I think we're over an hour now, right?
We didn't hear Eric, and well, Joe doesn't have much prep time. Eric just wing everything.
I just wing everything.
Just sit down and
I just sit down and
the time that I DM'd, I planned everything out. Like I had like pages worth of stuff for one session, so I went probably a little overkill.
This is why I wanted to have you here, because I knew that there wasn't too much to mine, which is like I would say the only preparing I did most of the time was if it was a module, I'd go, oh, we're playing at 6:00 at 4:30, I would read the next 10 pages of the module. That's the most prep I ever did for that kind of stuff. Or if I'm winging everything, I learned to have a list of names so that I wasn't having to go, well, this guy's name is Billy McThompson, and he's the town guard leader. I just had some like generic fantasy names lined up, and someone goes, who's the leader of the town guard? And I could be like, well, his name is Cornelius Vanderbilt. I glance at my sheet.
Be careful with those names, because if you don't say them out loud a few times.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you end up with urine.
Yeah.
You said that, I was like, did you just say urine?
Oh my god.
That happens to the best of them. That happened to Matt Mercer last week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he had to come up with what seemingly was a name on the fly that he had like written down somewhere, and it was like Mickend, and they're like, "Did you say my cunt?"
Yeah, jeez, dude. You try. I don't know. I don't try. I think that's the difference. Like I knew that I wouldn't have a lot of input because I knew what my style has always been. I probably would change a lot if I started running a campaign now, because I'm more exposed to story-driven campaigns now than I was.
I will say I think it's easier to run a homebrew than it is a pre-written.
Yes.
Just because, like, if you wrote it all, then you know like who's going to do what and what changes if these certain criteria aren't met. Whereas in a pre-written, if your party interacts with someone who is not one of the main people they're supposed to interact with and changes the story, like, well, I don't know what happens now. Then you got to go into like writing it yourself anyway.
I think that
it just becomes a chore.
Yeah, I think that it's just like you're either the person who wants to prep too much, and then the pre-writtens make it feel really rigid. Or like I have a friend who recently got done doing, I can't honestly remember the name, but he was doing a pre-written campaign. I didn't even know it was pre-written. He was telling me about it. I was like, this campaign sounds amazing. He's explaining the things that are happening. He comes up with all this cool crap for his characters to do. He lets the characters develop. He lets his players do whatever they want to do. And then he just kind of like barely pulls them into the main thing at the last second kind of thing. And really, I think it seems like the only thing he really pulled from the module was like the high points, and everything else is just like been a wild, awesome ride. And every time he talks about his campaign, I'm like, that sounds like the sickest campaign I've ever. That sounds amazing. But of course it does. Of course it sounds amazing because everyone only wants, you only hear like the most action-packed, sickest moments.
Yeah, you don't hear about shop day.
Yeah, shop day is great.
They spent the whole day in the shop.
Yeah.
I do got one more question probably to finish on, and that is, how do you incorporate player backstories into your campaign?
I was going to ask the same question.
Oh, well, that's perfect for you guys because I don't. When I've run campaigns, it's been, hey guys, you want to play some Warhammer 40K with D&D rules? That's most of the D&D I've played in my life. So this is a you guys question, not a me question.
I didn't have backstories in mind.
How then I would ask you guys, how either do you think you would, or how would you prefer your character backstories be integrated into a campaign?
I feel like
I kind of like the way they did it in campaign 2 of Critical Role. It kind of felt like throughout the campaign, each character, it was like their arc. It was their time to shine. So like for the majority of the first part of it, it felt like Ford was kind of the main character. They were like doing all of his finding the eyes of Uk'otoa and all and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that, where it's he's kind of the main guy at this particular point, but he's still not. It's not like he's the main guy forever. It's just we're doing his stuff, so it kind of shapes around that in arcs throughout the campaign.
That was what I was trying to do with my first campaign. The way it sort of ended up, and part of this was because we were sort of new to playing with each other and we weren't as into the role-playing aspect yet, is it ended up being whoever wants to role-play the most gets the most time out of their backstory. Which was mostly Joe.
Mostly Joe.
I think he was willing to look into those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, how about you, Eric?
I think that if I had to integrate someone's backstory into a campaign, most backstories are, and this is not an insult to people, but most people don't write a lot. And so when they write a backstory, it is very one-dimensional. My X thing happened to me, and it was this guy that did it, and I want to find him. Most people have a revenge story backstory. So outside of that, I suppose it would just be extremely difficult. But I feel like the vast majority of backstories that get turned in are like really easily solved backstories. The hard part isn't going, all right, so here's the guy. You guys finally find him and you're going to fight him. It's making it interesting that I feel like would be the hardest part for me to do, where it's not just...
You got to answer a question with a question.
Yeah. Here's Jimbo. It's the guy you've been looking for. What are you going to do? He says, I remember you, you little piece of shit. I'm going to kill you. And then you fight and you win, or you don't, but you win. Right. And
it wasn't Jimbo at all. It was a doppelganger.
Yeah. That would be a decent twist. But like, I don't know that I would think of that on the fly. I'd be like, all right, we killed Jimbo. Now what? And like, all of Jimbo's men are like, oh no, Jimbo. Oh, you're stronger than Jimbo. We're going to follow you. Maybe that's where it goes. How do you make this where the person put in an amount of effort they thought was good? Let's say that they spent a lot of time on this thing and they turn it in, and then their whole backstory is resolved in 1 3-hour session. Like that I feel like that would be just crushing. Like, oh, okay, well, glad I wrote that backstory.
Well, to that point, I mean, a lot of yours got resolved in 2 sessions.
In 2 sessions, yeah. And realistically 1, because one of them was just like crawling up them. Up is good, down is bad, going up the mountain.
So how do you feel? Do you like the way that was integrated, or do you have another suggestion for how you thought it would be or wanted it to be?
How I thought it would go and how it went were different. I don't want to say it was bad. It was totally fine. I thought it would be a longer thing to resolve. I thought there was a pretty easy resolvable thing. Kill the guy get back. And then once I get back, can try to convince them all to get together. That was the thing I thought was going to take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Collecting all these disparate tribes and getting them to cooperate. I thought that would be the hard part, the part that was going to take multiple sessions. And the way you did it was fine. There was just a guy who did it all for me, and all I had to do was kill him.
Yeah, when you gave me the backstory, I looked at it and I was like, well, if his parents loved him, like they would be taking actions to find him.
And that's good too, because I never even considered that. I figured that
just life goes on without him. See you later.
Well, they're in that kind of tribal setting, that could very well be a thing that they do. They go, wow, it really sucks that he's gone, but life's hard here and we have to move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You gave me the backstory and I saw that and I was like, wow, if his parents love him, then they probably are. I mean, maybe his dad even does takes his suggestion to heart and is like, maybe if he can be disappeared just like that, maybe he had some merit to what he was trying to say. Maybe we should be trying to get these tribes together. And so him doing that, the reason he didn't want to in the first place is because he thought it would show weakness. And then him having that heartfelt moment ended up showing weakness, and his worst fears sort of came true.
And that was a totally fine way to handle it. I'm not disappointed with how it turned out. I just thought it would take more than 2 sessions.
Well, I mean, I thought it was going to be done quick, so that's why I kind of left your Gen storyline a little
a little more open. Yeah.
I also a long time ago with Stephen Moffat, Doctor Who.
Okay.
And he said that you ask a question, and by the end of the episode, if you answer it, that's kind of a letdown. Like you have this question, you really want to know what's going on, and you answers it, that's it, it's done. And it's kind of a letdown. And so if you ask your question and then you answer it, but then you ask a bigger question with the answer, that's what draws you into a story or into TV show or whatever. But that kind of thing.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a really good
problem with it is you end up with too many questions, like in my campaigns.
I was going to say the trap with that is, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the series Heroes. Well, the first season, oh my God, it's amazing. And then the second season's like, okay, that was pretty good. It's not as good as the first. And the third season's like, where's this going? And then fourth season's like, this is garbage. It's all questions. Nothing is ever answered.
Yeah, you eventually have to answer the question. And if you branch too much, it does get confusing.
Perfect example of you got to answer some questions.
Sometimes. Wait, Heroes, the TV show that was on FX?
Yeah, it was kind of like, it was basically like X-Men type situation.
I remember the show, but it was a show that I only watched 3 episodes of.
Well, if you watch season 1, you'll be like, this is the greatest show of all time. And
I think my problem is the 4th season was coming out and everyone's like, gotta watch a show, it's so sick. And I started watching the 4th season and I was like 3 episodes into it and I was like, what?
You started on the 4th season?
Yeah, I mean, some shows are fine that way. And this show's so amazing. And I watch 2 or 3 episodes and I was like, what in the actual fuck is happening with these characters? I don't know any context. And I mean, some shows
jumping in the middle of that would have been a mistake for sure.
Some shows you can do that with. That was definitely not one of
them. So Michael, how do you integrate character backstories?
I like the shorter backgrounds. I find them a lot easier to throw in twists, and I do what I can again to twist things and give you something unexpected. Try to give you something unexpected, but still respect the backstory is the tricky part. Like you don't want to I'm from a clan of strong warriors, and then you go back to visit them, and they're a bunch of little halflings that are farming or whatever. So try to respect the backstory, but give them a twist.
They're just
an
stealth
empire of kobolds.
They're stealth warriors, dude.
But how I do it is just I try to come up with a big idea, but every week I put down something with every character that fits in with a backstory. Whether maybe it's just like a simple he's wearing an amulet from your god, or I don't know, nothing is coming to mind. But
you're subtle nodding.
Little
nodding
things
towards it.
Yeah. And so if I kind of let the player decide whether they want to pursue that. If the player is like, well, that's weird, I want to pursue this, then I will sort of build from there and then kind of lean it into the backstory. And do my best to intermingle the backstories into the story somehow.
And like coming back to your campaign, Isaac, and my backstory, it's like that was such a weird situation too. I also didn't expect to be like sitting around in a circle with my entire group and then being like, so what do we want to do? And I was like, well, I guess we could go back to where I'm from. And everyone goes, yeah, let's do it. And then it's like a focused effort.
It certainly happened earlier than I thought it was going to. I was like, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah. So maybe if it was like that, if it was a more like gradual nudge in that direction, rather than like, so who's got a backstory we need to complete? Since nothing else is going on right this minute.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried.
Someone raises their
going
hand.
there that early, but then hold person happened and it wasn't a problem. So
yep, hold person crushed it,
dude. You had that whole thing like planned out, like how like the monsters on the mountain and the climb to the mountain and what's going to happen on the mountain. You had that all planned out ahead of time.
I had what kind of monsters would be. I did tune them a little bit for the monsters on the mountain. I tuned a little bit for you guys' level. The Grondar was largely complete. I think I adjusted his HP a little bit. But yeah, he was just good to go. From very early on. And you guys chose to go do it, and I was like, this might end poorly. But then hold person, and I was like, okay, well, I guess it's gonna be fine because he couldn't make a wisdom save,
and we just absolutely annihilated him.
Yeah, he would have done a lot of damage to you guys had he not been paralyzed the entire fight.
Good. That's what I like to hear.
And then as far as like just integrating stories more generally, I try to get people to give me their stories a few weeks ahead of time so that I can sort of sit with them. And then as I'm filling out a lot of the story beats that I want in the campaign, I look at them and like, does this make sense to lead into any of these story beats? And if they do, excellent. And if not, there's I still work with them, and then that can be like a side quest. And I will drop little hints. Like you guys went to Nethalon fairly early, and that's where your buddy was living. So you made a perception check, and someone happened to see him. He's working the docks every day. Yeah. Like if you guys didn't go to Nethalon, because you weren't going to the mountain. You guys were going to take a look at the slave fighting.
Yeah.
And to get there, you had to go through Nethalon. Well, you didn't have to, but you went through Nethalon, and you happened to see that guy, and then that sort of led to that. And if you would roll a lower perception check, then maybe you don't see him, and you don't actually hit up the mountain. But that's where he was, because you gave me all that information, and I was like, did you have any friends?
I know you started asking me that stuff, and I was like,
what were your parents' names? Did they have names?
I was like, all right, I got to make all this stuff up right now, because no, I didn't have any of that stuff prepared. Like what was on the page was what was
see your buddy. He's over there. He's like working on the docks. It's really weird that he's here. But yeah, I try to integrate them into other story arcs that I have going, if possible. Yeah. If they don't make sense, I don't try to shoehorn them in, and I just try to leave them as their own story arcs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like when I get backstories from my players, because it feels like an investment in the world. I also try to, similar to what Michael was saying, I try to take all the backstories with, this is that character's experience. This isn't necessarily exactly what happened. This is what this player saw and interpreted what was going on around him. So, like, with with David's backstory, man, it changed every week, so I wasn't sure, but I had things set up that were maybe not exactly what he had envisioned, but through my interpretation of what his character saw, like, oh, these things might not be exactly what he thinks.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was some things like that I try to. It's always fun to throw something given to you like, this is what I experienced. And we're like, but what you didn't see was all this other stuff, and that's why you think you saw what you saw.
Yeah.
So that's a fun part for me.
I can see that. I'm not the biggest fan of writing a big long backstory myself. I thought that what we did, where we created the world with that, drew the map and like everything, that made me more invested in like where my character is from and things like that than I usually am. You know what I mean? Because I know about the world. I know about the part of the world that I created in a lot of detail because how
many times have you gotten like a campaign primer with the map and the cities and descriptions and stuff, and you're like, I'm not reading that.
Yeah, and then, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then they're like, you guys go to the very first city, and you name some city, and I'm like, okay, and then I forget about it right after that.
Yeah.
But I feel like, and I'm sure I don't remember every name that I put on that page, but overarching, I know the story, I know where things are, and I'm able to like integrate that into the character talking. You know what I mean? Like when magic has come up, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a magic school, you know, and I know that because I placed that thing. Whereas I might not have that world knowledge otherwise, because even if I write this, I found that hard when I wrote my backstory for your campaign, Isaac, where it's like, since this isn't a world that I have any hand in creating, I have to make sure that everything I'm writing fits within the rules of the world. Whereas if I have some say, it makes it easier to be like, oh, well, I can bend this a little because I have a little bit of creative freedom as to where my character is from and everything.
Every time I've asked for a backstory, I've always said, just, you want a town, make it up. Just make it up because it's going to help me out. I don't think I've ever had a player just make it up. Like, I'm from a village in the woods, and I farmed all day. It's like, well, that doesn't give me anything.
I felt like I wrote you a pretty decent backstory this last time.
So I have a question for you then, Eric. If given what you just said, would you have an easier time writing a backstory for my campaign now that you have lived in the world? Or would you be about the same?
I think it's still harder. It's always harder to write with that kind of restriction, the restriction of someone else's rules. That being said, if I had to make another character, it would be easier because I understand to a greater degree the reach of, say, like the magic thing and how the cities kind of function and how society is kind of woven in. And I mean, like when I'm writing it, I can always text you and be like, does this thing happen? And then you can say yay or nay, but I'm still like shoved into that corridor, right? And I have to like, I can't push out against the walls too hard in a way that like I can't break this world. It has to fit in this boundary. And now that I'm not saying we're halfway through, but now that we're so many sessions in, I've seen the world, I understand it a little more. I could write a better backstory, or not a better one, but it would be easier to write. Whereas with Michael's campaign, I know that I can just kind of, aside from my character is the god of the moon or something like absolutely insane.
Spoiler alert, geez.
Yeah, gosh. I have a lot of creative freedom with where I'm from, what I did, this cool thing that I want to do. I know it's going to work, or I know that at least it will be considered.
To that point, I do like another reason I like getting backstories early is so I can go back and forth with the player on what's gonna go the way the player thinks and what's not. So I don't mind if you give me something that maybe doesn't exactly fit in the world, just because like we're telling the story of exceptional people. So maybe this thing that you wrote in here that wouldn't fit on everyone, maybe it does fit on your character because there's some exceptional reason that you are special. And I can write that into the story.
Yeah. I'm a very like when I write a backstory, this probably isn't good. I'm very like a hand, like a chess thing. I move the piece, I let my hand off. That's how it is. When I write the story and I give it to you, I have checked out.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way.
Like, what's on that page is on that page.
It just feels, I don't know, it feels prohibiting if you put a story in, the DM's like, not going to work. Change this. I'm like, but that's my life.
Yeah. Can you change this thing? I mean, I could, but I don't want to.
Yeah, once I'm settled on a character, I don't want to change it.
I don't want to change it.
I don't think I had any back and forth with anyone except for I had a little bit with Eric on like names and stuff, but nothing.
Yeah, that's different.
I don't think that I went back and forth with any changes.
No.
Except for anyone except for David and Brian.
If you want to
Brian sort of wanted to have that back and forth with me because he was like, "What fits here?" And I was like, "Okay, here's what fits here. There's a couple choices that can work."
Yeah.
And with David, I was going back and forth on tell me how this makes sense. That kind of thing. Because he gave me this like a decently cool backstory, but it just didn't make sense. Because I gave you the world primer and I was like, these are the main cities. It's like they have everything under control. There are wild areas still. You can certainly be from one of those wild areas.
And but like, I don't even
not going to be from an empire that no one's heard of.
I don't even want the burden of having to write my fiction like I'm writing a research paper. Where I come to a point and I'm like, and then I was from, and I go, hold on, tab over, read, look at the map. Where would I be from? That town seems all right. And then I flip back and I'm like, I'm from this town. You know what I mean? Like,
and to that point, you can totally just be like, put me in the town. I'm in this town that you think is appropriate. And I'll fill it in for you. And
then like, as far as you going, do these characters have names? That's a different thing. That's just adding. That's not, you're not subtracting from something I've already written.
Yeah.
So that's completely, man, we are on a wicked different tangent for.
I feel like it's the same. That's all about DMing.
It's all about DMing, I suppose.
Like for the first campaign, I had to like rip your arm off to give me a backstory.
Because I didn't want to write a backstory.
Bad. Your excuse was every time I write a backstory, nothing happens with it.
And I have bad experiences with backstories.
Yes.
I love making characters and making the backstory and coming up with and going. Yeah. I love that stuff.
I don't hate it. I've just been burned too many times. Our
Sunday group just doesn't do it. And so I've always just kind of like made my own little story in my head and kind of played my guy in my head and then rolled my dice. And I never really expected anything from a backstory before.
Scott's campaign was the last, like the burn that did the last burn that I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, he's my example of your warrior tribes that come back and because I think what was mine? Mine was like I think we were like I was kicked out, I think. Because I did something wrong. I was a rogue. And I went back and they were like welcome me with open arms, like, hey, welcome back. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought you hated me.
Yeah, and like I don't know how long of a backstory you wrote, but I think I wrote 8 pages or something like that for that character because I was really stoked. And he was like, "It's gonna be all story," and I was like, "Hell yeah, just what I've been waiting for." And I like wrote this big backstory, and I was like, "Finally, this is gonna be worth something." And I turned it in, and like it never came up other than like, yeah, there is a boat. And I'm like, yep, my guy did like boats in the backstory. That's right. Yep.
I worry about big backstories because I'm worried about how much the player expects things. How much am I allowed to play with if it's a big backstory? They seem pretty invested in it. If you're writing 8 pages, I don't want that.
I don't want that anymore either.
I want a paragraph. And then that I can fill in the gaps.
I want like a lump of clay, and I've given you like just the bare minimum to tell you what I am and where I came from. And the rest of it can be completely shaped by the game. That's how I want it to be now.
Yep. Give me where you're from and give me a question. I like that.
Yeah. Whenever I ask for backstories, I try to tell everyone how successful I am at conveying this is open. But I try to say, give me your like I've said before, your character's experience.
Yeah.
Don't tell me. Don't give me the narrator view. Give me the view from your character.
I think that's what I did with like my story for your latest campaign.
Yeah,
I wrote it like almost like a first person, like a movie. Like there's dialogue.
Good way.
Yeah, I am the story is from my point of view, and sometimes other characters say things, but it's from their point of view, not.
Yeah, and then
there's a guy hovering over it going, and then this happened.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I did when I gave my latest backstory to Michael. I was like, this is all just as my character sees it. If you read through here and something doesn't make sense or whatever, then maybe my character got it wrong. But that's just how he acknowledges what's happening to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did so we talked about Eric's current one. How did you guys, Michael and Joe, did you enjoy the way that your backstories were integrated in campaign, my first campaign?
Oh yeah, I mean my character was kind of like
the balling guy, dude.
Yeah, I loved it.
How can you not love it, dude?
I was curious to hear Michael, because I don't know exactly if I hit the mark how you wanted your master to behave.
I didn't like playing a Kenku. I didn't know. I want to talk.
They can talk now. So
yeah, I saw that. I didn't. I'm trying to remember. I didn't like that it was just sort of an end. Like I didn't have when I made Beak, I didn't really know the story, and I kind of made my own little story with how it ran, which is fine. But I kind of regret doing that because then I wasn't really invested in anything. All I cared about was my master. And I finally got back to my master. What's my motivation to leave my master again and join the party? That was one thing I was kind of missing with.
I struggled with that a little bit too, where it's like
my story was over, and like all I wanted to do was get back to my master, and there she was. Why would I leave her again?
My hope is when I do stuff, when you give me backstories, is that especially if they're their own arc, my hope is that enough time has passed with this new group of people that you have formed bonds strong enough to want to continue to help those people.
Yeah, that was my fault though, because that was the way I made that character was not really paying any attention or knowing anything about the rest of the world or caring about what happened in the world, and that was my own issue. I think
should it be okay just to like let a player sunset a character in that way? Like,
yeah, you can absolutely do that.
Goals achieved.
I always liked my characters when they died because it puts an end note on it. As long as it's a good death, it puts an end to their story. You know, if Beak had died at some point, it'd been fine because that was Beak's story.
How did you feel about the different? Because you met your master once in a dream, and I feel like that was more in line with the way you wrote that Beak saw it.
Yeah.
And then you met the master outside the dream, and I feel like it was a completely different experience, which I had planned on doing, but I was wondering about how you saw that.
That's what I saw. Secretly, I kind of hoped that the master would be evil. She was a drow, and I didn't realize you were doing not typical Forgotten Realms kind of drow.
Yeah.
And so I just assumed that was my story, as I fled my camp, and she was just using me as like a slave, basically. And so I was kind of anticipating if I find her, she's going to be evil. I'm going to fight her. That'll be a fun story. Like, I love this master, but then it turns out she's not treating me right at all.
But I was by the time you guys got there the second time, I had worried that if she was evil, you wouldn't care. You'd just be like, okay, let's go.
That's probably true. Yeah, it would have been an interesting question for Beak. What does Beak do? Does he go on the good side? Does he go on the bad side?
Beak was chaotic neutral.
Beak was something else for sure.
Beak
he was a fan favorite.
Find someone you like and stick with them.
Yeah. So like a little kid, dude.
Sticking with Joe's character by the end of it.
I've loved my new character on Fridays. The like not caring and just being like, oh, you want us to do some weird sketchy thing? Yeah, absolutely. We can try that, I guess. Not having any like
I love the morally gray stuff. Like, no one thinks that they're evil.
No.
One thinks that they're doing the right thing. Even
when you're doing a thing,
evil.
You're thinking, I'm in the right here, and everyone else is in the wrong. I am doing the correct thing right now.
Having said about being dead, my character, not me, I would be bummed if Merton died because his story has not played out yet.
Yeah.
There's going to be. Hopefully, you'll think that it's interesting. I hope you enjoy what I'm sure I'll find it interesting.
But you're good with it dying as long as the story kind of comes to a conclusion.
As long as he goes out in style, yeah.
As
long as it tells his story.
Even if it's like a long campaign.
Do what?
Even if it's really long and you've managed to live the whole time. That was my thing with the Euro campaign. I was like, in a way, I loved it, but in a way, I was like, I can't wait till this is over so I don't have to worry about dying. I was like doing everything.
It was so hard to get to you because you're always flying away or you're putting up firewalls or whatever you're doing.
I know.
I kept on making characters trying to put some sort of pressure on you, and I could never get anyone there.
I was just trying my hardest to keep pressure off of me. I was doing everything in my power to
You built such a terrible party at the start, and by the end, you had this like perfect mesh of party that I couldn't break through anything.
Dude, we had a plan. Yeah, you could break through. Remember, it's called charm. That was what broke it.
Yeah,
we had solutions for that at the end too, though.
By the end, but there was like a period where it was like, we are on top of the world. Nothing can stop us, baby.
I gotta tell you, it was a real hard decision to not be like, I have to automatically pick Elf for Friday campaign.
Yeah, gotta pick Elf. No charming this time, baby. Not getting charmed.
Rook was one level away, like a session or two away from leveling to a point where if someone tried to charm him, he could turn it around on them and charm them.
We weren't you weren't in the campaign at all when we were getting like charmed by all the god dang it, not a succubus, but whatever the
incubus.
We were getting charmed by incubuses like Joe was getting charmed by incubuses like all the time, and Joe hit like a truck. And like if he got charmed, I basically just had to escape and shoot him and try to get him back.
I didn't really plan it to be that way. You guys went to the 9 hells. There's incubus and succubus there.
Yeah.
And then there was a portal to get out, so obviously they're gonna get out. And so you guys just sort of happened to always be in that area of the story.
I know. It was rough. It was such a rough time. Like
there was a couple times where I was like, maybe I'm doing this too much. But it was pretty fun.
There was a time in a tavern when Joe got turned at the door and we were all stuck in the room with him.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
I was massacring everyone.
And he was wiping everyone out, and I was like, oh my, what do I do to like just get rid of him? That was before I think I had banish or anything. Because that's what I did.
You guys were just trying to hit everyone. Yeah, you're just punching each other.
Yeah. Later on
when he does something fishy, you walk up and punch him.
Yeah. Later on, if Joe did something crazy, if I couldn't fly away, I just banished him, and I was like, I'll deal with that when he gets back. Yeah. I didn't want to fight him. I didn't want to fight him up close. Out in the open, I think I definitely could have beat him, but in an enclosed space, I had no chance at all.
Those D&D moments, this is a D&D episode. Those are my favorite whenever things get like way out of whack, like not what you expect at all.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite times whenever like the party's doing something you don't expect at all, and you've got no notes covering that part of the thing, and so you're just throwing out whatever comes to the top of your head.
It's exciting.
I'll deal with it tomorrow, next session.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite.
It's like a really exciting, like palpable in the moment kind of like feeling where it's like, this could go anywhere. This could go like, I have no idea what's happening right now. And this could go any direction, and it would be freaking sick because everything
that makes DMing a lot more fun for me because I'm kind of along for the ride as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The DM's a player.
No.
All right, I think that's
like 2 hours. Yeah,
The DM as a player might be a good place to stop this. Thanks for tuning in to this extra long episode. Yes, 2 hours nearly. We started at 8:31. It is 10:25. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'm sure the next one won't be this long, and it'll be a random topic. I'm not even going to spoil it. Ooh.
Bye.
We don't have one yet.
No, you're lifting you're putting down the DM screen. You can't say that.
You can't say that. Golly.